is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is.
It is the last day of March 2025, and the Final Four is set for 50 years ago on March 31st, 1975. Mike Flynn of the University of Kentucky was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but this is the ultimate SI jinx, as on that same date, Kentucky played UCLA in the finals of the tournament, and we'll get to that in a bit on the Past Our Prime podcast. Scott Johnston here, along with Bill Mahoney and Mark Hoffman.
Hi there.
3 TV sports producers who worked in the business. I don't think we ever added it up completely, but it's got to be close to 100 years combined, give or take.
Mark, I think it's over.
Yeah,
Mark's been in the business for 45 years.
Yeah.
Mark, you started before there was TV. What was radio like?
I did cave. I was back in the cave painting days where you had to relay the news by painting blood on the wall of
That's
cave.
right.
Fire! When was your rookie year, Mark?
I guess 1981. Yeah, 1981.
And where was that?
Well, I did internships at CNN, the LA bureau, and I did start an internship in September at KCBS. I was working at the UCLA radio station, so that was probably it. There was a lot of great experience I got just helping out at the LA bureau at CNN too.
Bill, your rookie year had to be around 1990?
It was with you.
Yeah. At
KCAL, yeah.
Bill and I had a great time. We would be the first ones there on weekends, and we were in this little off the building to the side of KCAL's main building, and it could be the middle of summer. It could be 100 degrees out. But that room was freezing. We had heaters, literally portable heaters going like in August. It was so
We were all
cold.
wearing jackets and, it was cold in that room.
Bill, your first paying job, what?
Was a PA at Channel 9 because a guy named Mark Proval quit.
Yes.
And I was standing there and Bob said, "Can you do the job?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You're hired." That's exactly it's Bob Guerrero said that. That's exactly my first job. I remember it.
Quite a vetting process.
Yep. Yeah, it was. They put me through the ringer.
I started as an intern as well back in '87, and back then 2 huge differences for interns. 1, you didn't get paid.
Yeah.
And 2, the benefit of that was you could come in as much as you wanted, basically.
Yep.
So yeah, I didn't get paid a penny to come in, quite a bit. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, you name it. They asked if I could come in. Yes.
Exactly. It's what you did. You didn't. I
Right.
didn't care. I just said, "Well, yeah." I didn't think about not being paid. I thought, no, you're paying your dues.
In 82, I would come in and work the weekends for free. I didn't start getting paid till like September of '82. I was getting paid at KBC Radio at the time, so I was making some money. But on the weekends, I would always want to come in because, like, during baseball season, they'd send me out to do post game. So
right.
Saturday night I go to Dodger Stadium, or Anaheim Stadium, and Sunday I do the same. It was great.
Oh yeah, the first time you start to get to go to games with passes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in Arizona still covering spring training, and sitting up in what they charge, like we're basically sitting in suites, and it's just the 3 of us, and it's fantastic.
Yep.
It's still fantastic, but back then it was magical. Walk on the field, it was just incredible. I was like, this can't be happening.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was a PA for the Laker pregame show, and back in the day, it wasn't as easy to record videos on VHS, but we did. And so I always took that first picture of my name on the TV. It was so neat. I was like, oh my gosh, it was just so good.
All right, most issues start their week off with scorecard, but this time we're going to start with Mark and the shop walk and book talk. What you got, Mark?
Well, it's this article. It's talking about freeze-dried food, and which was something that I had invented, I want to say in World War II. It's like a space age technology where you can seal your food and then you have to kind of unfreeze it and you can eat it. And my memory of freeze-dried food is before my senior year in high school, the football team had a tradition where they would go climb Mount Whitney. So you would like go from the parking lot to this portal area, camp that night, and then go to the top and back down. So I brought freeze-dried food with me to cook, for my dinner, but I didn't cook it properly. So I was trying to eat it and it tasted mostly like cardboard because I didn't do it properly. So that's my fond memory of freeze-dried food.
Never had freeze-dried food.
I've never had freeze-dried food. I love like dried apricots or those kind of things, but freeze-dried, I think of astronauts.
Me too.
I think I put too much in a little pot, and that was the problem.
Is that why you threw up?
No, I don't know. Maybe because because the next day we get to the very top of the mountain, and once I get to the top of the mountain, I threw up, and someone took a picture of me doing it in glorious, kind of like Tracy Morgan at Nick.
Yes.
Oh, geez. All right, and what about the book?
Oh, yeah, and then there's a book here written by Charles Berlitz, and it's not even the book. I mean, it's he wrote a lot of books, Chariot of God, the Bermuda Triangle, with these weird theories of aliens were on the Earth, but they were the Earth before us, and all this stuff, and trying to explain the Bermuda Triangle. But the thing that caught my attention was the last name Berlitz. His grandfather Maximilian founded the Berlitz language schools. And I don't know if you remember those, but they would be in cities all over the world. And I remember I was in high school and I had to do a report and I had to interview someone in French for my French class, which by the way, I hated. So there was a Berlitz school in the area. So I called them up, got a hold of a French teacher there, and I went there and interviewed the French teacher in French. Very poorly, I might add, but
yeah. It's so funny. We were talking yesterday about how like things when you're a kid just aren't as big as you would have thought they were when you're an adult, like lava and quicksand.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna add the Bermuda Triangle to that. Man, that was terrifying as a child, but hasn't really had much of an effect on me since I was 8.
Oh.
It used to be in the Enquirer every week. They used to have man flies in. They've never seen him again. I thought, oh my God, I'm never going there. Yeah, Triangle.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know Amelia Earhart's there. All right, scorecard. I'll go first on this one. 59 years ago, Georgia Tech beat Cumberland 222-0 in college football, and now in baseball, they're doing it again against Earlham College. They beat them 41-0. Get this: Georgia Tech's Jerry Bass pitches a no-hitter, strikes out 19. And Earlham was booting the ball around as though the game were soccer. The score was only 5-0 after 3 frames. But then the Yellow Jackets scored 3 in the 4th, 8 in the 5th, 11 in the 6th, 4 in the 7th, and 10 in the 8th. Luckily, there was no save situation, so they didn't have to hit in the bottom of the 9th inning. The Hustling Quakers contributed to their dismemberment with 13 errors, 15 walks, and a wild pitch. Tech had only 28 hits, which was just fine by their coach, Jim Lunk, who spent much of the game trying to figure out a way to keep down the score. He didn't do a very good job of that. So 41-0.
No mercy rules then.
No.
Well, yeah, you're having a Division I power program take on like a junior college.
Yeah,
right. Bill.
Oh, okay. This story is about Imogene Hicks. She was considered the Florence Nightingale of the railbirds at the Pimlico racetrack. She's seen it all, but a couple stand out. There was one patron that had a heart condition that he used to take up station right outside her first aid room and down liberal doses of medicine between races. He told her, "I'd rather die here than at home." Why, you ask? Because I die happy.
I forgot the punchline. That's good.
Yes, he knew he didn't want to go home, and there's some people that would say that themselves now. But her all-time favorite is a horse jockey. I'll say it said horse player, but who arrived on a stretcher showing no signs of life, no blood pressure, no pulse. The staff was just about to pull the cover over his head when the results of the latest race began to come over the PA system. The cadaver, this guy, sits upright on the stretcher and asks, "Who won?" They told him, said Nurse Hicks, and he got up and walked straight out. They never knew where he went, but they were fairly sure it wasn't to the great cashier window in the sky.
I'll tell you, I'm not going to that nurse's office, man.
No.
They can't tell a person's dead or not.
Isn't there one jockey we did a story on that
Yeah.
actually they brought into the morgue
Yep.
and he ended up running back to see his race?
Yeah, they pronounced him dead.
Yes, yeah, that's it.
This story reminded me of a joke that I learned as a kid. It's a bad joke, but it's a joke. And there's this old couple named the Hills, like Bob and Margaret Hill, and they're driving and they get into a car accident and they apparently die and they take him to the morgue. So, the morgue attendant is, marked him as dead and everything like that. And one thing the morgue attendant liked to do to relax himself was he used to play the organ all the time. So he gets on his organ and starts playing him, and all of his assistant says, "Hey, the bodies are moving." And he goes, "What?" And he stops playing, and then they don't do anything. And then he starts playing the organ again, and they start moving again. And then he stops, and they stop. And all of a sudden, they're looking at each other going, "What the hell?" So he starts playing again, and they're moving and moving. And then he stops, and his assistant yells, "Don't stop now. The Hills are alive with the sound of music."
Oh, God.
I told you it was a bad joke, but that story just
very
reminded me
good.
of it.
That's so clean too.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. You know the great thing about podcasts, there's a sense of anonymity where
Yeah.
no one can see you. So you can say the dumbest things, the stupidest jokes, because
Well,
I'm
I'm
staring at you going, "That you're an idiot."
I'm putting a picture out of you. And,
As an idiot. Yes.
I got one more. This is a funny one. Joe Stanton, administrator of Maryland's Port Authority, has returned from his vacation in Naples, Florida, with an arm in a sling, and we might as well get to the seat of his problems right away. They started on the golf course when Stanton stepped from his cart to play a shot. He took a drag from his cigarette and placed it in an ashtray in the cart. As he addressed the ball, a gust of wind blew the cigarette onto the cart's unoccupied driver's seat. Joe's wife, Vicky, meanwhile, had played her shot, returned to the cart, and sat down on the cigarette. Somewhat startled, to say the least, she put on about 5 quick moves, one of which started the cart. It surged forward over Joe, breaking his arm.
Oh.
That hurt, but the real pain came when his brother John, who was playing in the same threesome, bent over him and said, "Joe, that will be a 2-stroke penalty for delay of play."
Golfers are tough, man.
I think the wife was like, "I'm getting him.
Yeah.
I'm running this SOB down." They said it, Mark.
Al Braverman, who's the fight manager, reacting to a suggestion that Muhammad Ali might complain about using a foreign substance on Chuck Webner's face. He quoted, "It's not a foreign substance. It comes from the United States."
Yes.
That would make
Fresh
it
on the heels.
a domestic substance.
Fresh on the heels of us talking a lot about Chuck Wepner from last week, and we failed to mention my favorite quote from that was when Braverman, after Wepner knocks Muhammad Ali down, he goes back to the corner while they're counting, and he says to Braverman, Wepner does, "Start the car, Al. We're going to the bank." And Braverman looks at him and says, "I don't know, Chuck. Muhammad just got up and he looks really pissed."
And he took out the rest of that on his face.
Proceeded to pummel him for the next 7 rounds. It will be a horse race. Undefeated Indiana out. Kentucky sent them home and is joined by UCLA, Syracuse, and Louisville in the Final Four. Could it be Kentucky and Louisville in the finals? If so, SI writes, the finals could be even more gripping, particularly if Kentucky and Louisville face off in a vengeful, all-hillbilly feud. Now, I'm not sure you can get away with writing all-hillbilly feud anymore these days, but to the most highly anticipated game, that was the rematch between Kentucky and the Hoosiers. Indiana killed them in the regular season by 24 points, and at one point, Bob Knight, as he was often to do, got into it with the refs. He went over by the Kentucky bench, and there was a little tap he did on the head of Joe B. Hall, the Kentucky coach. Did not like that. All I want is a chance to play them, he said. Knight personally humiliated me, and I'll never forget it. So some bad blood between the coaches, and it goes Kentucky's way. So, Bill, who's waiting for Kentucky in the semis?
I think they're going to be the old Orange from Syracuse, which, if you look at what they did in that tournament, it's sort of fortunate to be there. They beat North Carolina with 5 seconds left in the game. Then they had a late shot to send the Kansas State game to OT, where they pulled away, winning by 8. But in their first round game, they almost lost to LaSalle. They had to go to overtime, where they won by 4. So Syracuse is getting there, but by the hair of their chinny chin chin.
And in the other bracket, Bill, Denny Crum making a name for himself.
Yeah, he's got a good team there. But the thing, they're led by one guy that we've all heard of. His name was Junior Bridgman. Bridgman had a great college career. He averaged 15, 7, and 2, and then he went to the pros and averaged 13, 3, and 2. He was part of the Kareem trade to the Lakers. But he died recently, died just a couple weeks ago. This man was an amazing entrepreneur. Yes, he played in the NBA, but he invested in franchises like Wendy's and Chili's, about 120 of them. Then he sold those Chili's and Wendy's, and he started a Coca-Cola bottling company to distribute their beverage brands. He is one of the richest ex-athletes ever, worth over $1.4 billion. He was an amazing man. I mean, I heard he was wonderful to people and helped out everybody, but really was a smart guy and knew how to invest his money and prepare for time after the NBA.
Yeah, on the CBS morning show, Gail King was talking about the fact that she had met Junior Bridgman because he was this entrepreneur and stuff, and she had no idea he had been this really successful basketball player. And then they're doing the obit story. She's going, I had no idea he had all this basketball background.
And Scott, didn't you try to get Junior Bridgman? Did you have any, what happened with that?
No, just left some voicemails and some emails about maybe, I don't know, 2 months or so ago. I forget what the and it was because we were having one of those issues where we're having trouble getting people. Yeah. And so I saw his name, and at the time I then looked him up, and I was like, oh my God, I had no idea. And in fact, in 2016, Forbes magazine listed the 4 highest paid or the with most money athletes, retired athletes. And they were in order: Michael Jordan, Beckham,
wow,
Arnold Palmer, and Junior Bridgman.
Wow.
That's pretty good company. Yeah.
Great company.
He was only 71 years old and had a heart attack, and they couldn't do anything to help him.
No.
But I just think that Junior Bridgman is really a credit for what he was able to do. But sometimes we have a society that if Junior Bridgman, let's say, went off and committed crimes, that'd be on every newspaper. But because he had made himself such a successful man, it's true, not many people knew about it.
That is a great point, Bill. That is a great point. If he had beaten the crap out of his wife, we'd all know who it is.
Yep.
What an indictment on
society,
on the world we live in.
Yep.
Mark, we've mentioned too many times to count. UCLA going for a 10th national title, and now it's officially the last game for, and sometimes we use this term a little loosely, but in this case fits, the legendary Wizard of Westwood, Coach John Wooden.
And I think we've had numerous guests on the show, and I think, again, Wooden didn't let it be known he was going to retire until after the semifinals, the Louisville game. So going to the Final Four, I don't think people knew for sure he was going to retire. But what was so fascinating about UCLA Louisville is he was facing off against his protege, Denny Crum. Mm-hmm. Denny Crum had been one of his top assistants. And in fact, there was some scuttlebutt that when Wooden retired, they should have just offered the job to Crum instead of Gene Bartow. But, I think there were a couple of reasons. One, Crum had just started there and they didn't want to leave so quickly. But they missed their window because they could have had Denny Crum, and then the UCLA would have had continuity at head coach, and they would have kept rolling with the dynasty. But the other interesting thing here is everyone thinks this was UCLA's 10th title, and UCLA was one of the favorites. People forget Indiana was the clear favorite that year. They were unbeaten. They were steamrolling everyone. Then the injury to May led to the loss to Kentucky. So people forget how dominant Indiana was. And then the next year, they run the table and they're perfect and win it all. But that could have easily been back-to-back championships for Indiana.
Yep. All right. March 31st, we are ready to talk some baseball. And yet, for the second time in the matter of weeks, I see this big thing on baseball, and there's not much on it.
Pictures.
Yeah. Last week, St. Louis manager Red Shandy said this of a rookie first baseman: "We have to give him his chance. He's proved he deserves it. You can't keep a kid with his ability on the bench or in the minors." He's talking about, of course, Seinfeld star Keith Hernandez. What other rookies of 1975 were they talking about, Bill?
Well, let me first say, that doesn't look like the Keith Hernandez that we all know from Seinfeld or from when he played with the Mets. He looks like a little boy.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's his mustache?
Exactly. There's nothing there. But they were talking about, one of the guys on there was Jim Kern. Loved Jim Kern when he was with the Indians and the Rangers, known as the Amazing Emu. Kern was once the closer on the Indians. He was also saving games for a guy named Dennis Eckersley. Sort of one of the greatest to say. But Kern was actually very good himself. Fangraphs had him one of the, what it said, best relief pitcher in baseball history over a given 4-year period. From 76 to 79, he won 42 games, registered 75 saves out of the bullpen, and averaged more than 100 innings per year. This man just was new how to pitch, but he was also a bit, I remember him being just a little bit odd.
Different.
Yeah, but he was fun odd. He had that crazy 70s hair. I loved him. I thought Jim Kern was just amazing. He threw really hard, too.
Yep.
Well, I mean, this list is amazing because it has not only Keith Hernandez, but it has Gary Carter, catcher for Montreal, Phil Gardner, which people forget and think of him as his managerial days, but he was a great ball player too, starting off with the Oakland A's. But like my favorite rookie player here really never became a success. It was Tom Verizor, because he was a shortstop of the Detroit Tigers,
That's right.
And they were going to give him the job. They'd actually traded Eddie Brinkman away, And I just remember Tom, he stuck for a few years. He was a glove guy, couldn't really hit. And then they had another shortstop coming up in their system by the name of Alan Trammell.
Can I say one thing about Gary Carter? Because I know this will bring Mark into it.
Yeah.
That when Gary Carter was coming out of high school, he had more than 100 athletic scholarship offers. He actually signed a letter of intent to play football for the UCLA Bruins, going to be the quarterback. But instead, he signed with the Expos.
Who also had a football scholarship from UCLA? Bobby Grich.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow. Was a quarterback as well?
No, I have to look at what position he played. This is off the top of my head. So if I'm wrong, don't sue me.
I'm suing you. You're done.
Call me Wikipedia. I can be just throw things at the wall.
Yeah. Fred Lynn and John the Count Montefusco are the AL and NL Rookies of the Year, with Lynn also winning AL MVP in his rookie season. So a banner year for rookies in the bigs.
As Bill mentioned, Jim Kern was a rookie in 1975 for the Cleveland Indians. The year prior, he got a sniff of the majors, pitching in 4 games, 3 of them starts. And in 75, a little more, 13 games, 7 starts. But in 76, he goes to the pen, and a star is born. He wins 10 games, saves another 15 with an ERA of 2.37 over 117 innings pitched. And in 77, 78, and 79, literally an American League All-Star, one of the best closers in the game. And in 1979, all comes together, a season for the ages. In his first year with the Rangers, get this, 143 innings out of the pen. He goes 13-5, saved 29 games with an ERA of 1.57, finished 4th in the voting for Cy Young. And the Amazing Emu, Jim Kern, joins us now on the Past Our Prime podcast. Hey, Jim, how things going today?
Not bad. Been out in the backyard all morning planting plants and working in the garden.
Sounds good. Hasn't gotten too hot there yet, I suppose. That's good. That's coming.
Oh yeah. It hasn't hit 90 yet, but we'll be begging for 90 in about 60 days.
Remember those days.
Hey, before we go any further, let's just get it out of the way. The Amazing Emu. How'd you get that nickname? Where'd that come from?
In about 1976, in the clubhouse in Cleveland, Fritz Peterson and Pat Dobson were doing a crossword puzzle on a Sunday morning, and I walked by at the time. I was 6'5" and weighed about 185, and was all arms and legs. I mean, shirt sleeve, I wear a 38. Inseam in my jeans is a 40. And as I walked by, they looked at me and gave me the nickname Emu, which was the crossword puzzle they were looking for, the world's largest non-flying bird. And I've been Emu ever since. You know, a lot of people reject nicknames, and to me, in the major leagues, it was just a matter that the guys, the veterans, had accepted you, and I've always enjoyed Emu. He's the wild and crazy guy, and it's allowed me to keep Jim Kern for myself. I gave the press Emu, and they were happy.
Do you ever watch the Liberty Mutual insurance ad?
That's right.
Doug and Emu?
Check it out, man, with sunglasses and all.
Because emos don't get the respect. They don't get, you know, now they're commercial heroes.
Yes.
You know, it's amazing. I was in Argentina, the first week of March with a group. We were fishing for golden dorado and wing shooting. And we went across a large ranch down there. It was about 100,000 acres, and actually saw about a dozen emus in the wild down there, which was interesting to see the relation.
It's a bummer that there really aren't great nicknames anymore.
Just about to say that.
In the game,
yeah,
right?
It's all, they just take their last name and go, Booney,
yeah,
Dougie,
Kearney.
Kearney. Yeah. What happened to the nicknames?
Well, it's you know, I think the difference between now and back in our time in the 70s and 80s is back then we traveled on a commercial plane a lot of time. Part of the time we had charters, but the guys always hung together. After the game, you'd be out going to dinner, drinking, whatever, and you hung out together. So everybody got along with everybody else. And from what I hear and talking to the guys now, after the game, the guys pretty much splinter onto themselves, their own areas they go to. But I'll tell you one thing. I tell people I learned more about pitching than I ever did from a pitching coach by sitting in a bar with Boog Powell, listening to him talk about hitting. You know, to me, a pitching coach was there to keep your mechanics together and fine-tune you when things start going to hell. But they didn't teach you the philosophy of pitching. Sitting with Boog Powell in a bar one night, I can remember telling him, Boog, I don't understand this. You know, I throw this slider on the outside half the plate, and a big right-handed hitter doesn't even offer at it, as if I'm telling him what I'm going to throw. And Boog looks at me, and we both had, Boog liked to drink see-throughs, which were vodka martinis. He'd say at night, Emu, let's go drink some see-throughs.
So he was a poet.
We probably only had 4 or 5, and Boog is sitting there. He says, dumbass rookie. He said a big power hitter is looking for a ball on the inside half the plate early in the count, because that's what they do, is drive the ball. He says you watch them. And early in the count, they'll open the shoulder and open the hips looking for that inside pitch. What they're doing is conceding the outside half the plate until I get behind in the count. He said, throw a fastball on that outside corner to start with, then throw the slider. He said, 0-1, they can't be as defensive now, and they've got to be more straight up and not trying to yank the ball. So next time I get in the game, Boog's playing first, and had somebody up, Baylor, Rudy, you know, somebody from the right side, and catcher calls a fastball inside. I went, no, fastball outside, yeah. Boom, strike one. You could see him get there, and as soon as the arms start coming forward, he's opening that front shoulder and opening the hips to be able to get the hands out quick and pull the ball. And strike one. And then I throw him a breaking pitch on the outside corner, and he waves at it. Then I came up and in for ball 1, 1 and 2, and then went back down and away for strike 3. He's going back dugout, and I look at Boog, and Boog walks about halfway to me from first base and says, See how that works? Goddamn rookie. He turns around and walks back. But, yeah, I actually learned more about pitching listening to hitters talking about hitting than I ever did from a pitching coach.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And that's, you can't put a value on those veteran players that have just seen it all, done it all.
Yeah, and the successful ones. Boog was MVP, 66, 67, someplace in there? I mean, Boog was the greatest guy you'd ever want to meet. I mean, Pat Dobson and Boog had played in Baltimore together, and they hung out a lot together. I can remember one night, I think it was 75, we're in the room with Boog and Dauber, and there's Eckersley, myself, and Rick Manning. And Boog and Dauber are telling stories, and we are laughing so hard, I kid you not, my cheeks hurt the next day from laughing. These guys were just great, but back then, they would take the young guys they liked under their arms and teach you big league etiquette. I mean, Gaylord Perry was the absolute best at teaching you big league etiquette. If you screwed it up, it would hurt. I mean, Gaylord was one of my best friends, but every time you said hi and shook hands, it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize how big Gaylord was. You had people like Jim Bibby that was 6'5", 250, maybe Winfield, Parker, the same, and they were structurally big. I mean, when they had their shirt off, it was, like, holy shit. And then you had Gaylord. Gaylord was 6'5", 250, but he was farm boy strong.
Yeah.
I guarantee you the only weight Gaylord ever pumped was a 70-pound square bale of hay or a 100-pound bag of grist, but my Lord, that man was strong.
You get drafted by the Indians out of Midland High School in Midland, Michigan.
No, wrong. Now,
no,
that's
correct me.
the misconception.
Yes.
Google has got. I was never drafted. I signed as a free agent. I went to all the tryout camps. I didn't sign until after the American Legion season in 68. We won the state championship. Little town of 25,000 beat Detroit Hamtramck for the American Legion state championship. Interesting on that team, little town of 25,000, we had 4 people sign big league contracts. A guy you know very well managed Houston, San Diego, and the Mets. Terry Collins.
Oh, yeah.
Was our second baseman.
Oh, yeah. I love TC.
So, yeah. I played with Terry from the time I was 9 years old till I was 18. One of the best athletes you'd ever want to see. In his senior year of high school, Terry was captain of the football, basketball, and baseball teams.
Wow.
At 5'10", the little guy could stuff a basketball.
Could you?
I was 6'5" and couldn't. That hurt.
Yeah. So you get started as a pro, and in '69, you decide to enlist in the Marines, and right in the middle of the Vietnam War, and then you serve a year there and 5 more in the reserves. How did that change your life?
Well, the Marine Corps was probably the biggest influence in my life. The big thing about the Marine Corps is "I can't" is not a phrase that works. I mean, it simply does not work. You find a way to do it, or they beat the hell out of you. So you learn in a hurry that if you look at something 2 or 3 ways and it doesn't work, look at the other 97. You'll figure out a way to make it work. To me, the Marine Corps was the biggest influence in my life, and it really wasn't my choice. I had been invited to Major League Spring Training in '69, so I dropped out of college after the fall semester of '68. And, of course, sitting there when they used to pick the ping pong balls, when they had the draft on January 1st, and every birthday, every date of the year had a particular number on a ping pong ball.
Right.
And when mine came up, which was March 15th, it was the 14th one picked, which meant I was going to be drafted in either late January or February. That year they took to number 263, I think.
Wow.
And so everybody up to that number was going. So I'm suddenly looking for a reserve unit so I can spend my 6 months and then be able to play baseball. Well, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard all had 2 or 3 year waiting lists. Guess who didn't have a waiting list? The Marine Corps. So April, I'm at Parris Island, South Carolina, learning what the real world is all about.
How long did you stay in the Marines? Was it for 4 years, 6 months? And when you got out, did you have that same itch to play baseball?
Yeah, I spent the entire year, April till October, between Parris Island and Camp Lejeune on ITR. And then the next spring, what you did after that, you went one Saturday and Sunday a month, and 2 weeks during the summer to summer camp. I got to visit beautiful places like the Sand of 29 Palms, California, Little Creek, Virginia, jumping off troop ship and swimming a mile to shore with all your backpack and 782 gear on you. And yeah, it was interesting, but it allowed me to play baseball. The club would fly me back to Michigan once a month on a Thursday, do reserve meetings Saturday and Sunday, and then fly back on Monday.
How did being a Marine, or did it, help you on the baseball field?
Well, again, it helped your attitude that you could do it. You were never in a situation where you were ever awed again, because the Marines that put you into situations, I mean, you do simulations, you'd be in a foxhole and in infantry training, and they'd be dropping 60 millimeter mortars 50 yards out from you, and the whole ground would shake and you'd come apart. I mean, you were crawling under barbed wire with 30 caliber live ammo 4 feet above you. So you were never in awe of any situation, and you never doubted yourself because you had survived these situations and had learned that it was all possible. And so consequently that helped, as well as the physical conditioning. I mean, it was the stuff you went through. I mean, a 20-mile march was nothing big. I mean, that was a morning exercise. And so the physical end, never had any problem running sprints. If we were supposed to run 15 sprints, I'd run 25. You get to the point where you enjoyed hard work. And to me, that was a huge lesson in life.
So facing Jim Rice with the bases loaded in the ninth inning was no big deal compared to that.
Well, it was a big deal, but you weren't in awe. It didn't take it over. It was just a matter of let's get this done.
That's my new motto now.
Yeah,
let's
that's a
get
T-shirt
this
right there. Get this
done.
shit.
Yeah.
So you're back on the ball field, done, with your military service somewhat. You toil in the minors for 5-6 years. You finally get the call to the bigs. What was that like? And tell us about your first game for the Indians.
Well, I was in 1974. They were going to send me back to AA for the third year. And I told Bob Quinn, who at that time was the minor league, in charge of the minor leagues for the Indians, that I wasn't going back to AA. If there wasn't a spot for me in AAA, I was going back and finishing my degree. I had at that time an associate degree in chemical engineering. It was a pre-chemical engineering degree from a junior college. And I had been accepted to Michigan State in 1972, and was there for about 3 weeks. And then Las Mochas, Mexico called, and they wanted me to come down and pitch in winter ball. And what was interesting about that is that season in AA in Elmira, I was 3-11. But Jim Campanis and Dave Augustine from the Pirates, I think they were in West Haven at the time, were down there playing for Mochas, and they requested that they bring me down as they needed another pitcher. So I get this call. We want you to come down to Mexico. We'll pay you $2,000 a month plus all your expenses. Well, I was making $700 in AA at the time. And so I immediately dropped out of school, got the wife back to mid-Michigan, and flew down to Mexico. I can remember they met me in Tucson and flew me down to Las Mochas, which was about 11 hours south of the border by car. And we land there, they put me in a hotel, and they go away. Well, I don't speak a word of Spanish. And here I am all by myself in this farming community of Mochas. And I can remember walking down to a restaurant, sitting down, dirt floor, restaurant, and trying to order. Well, I ended up 8-3 that year down there. And so we go to AA, and I'm 12-7. The next year I go to AAA. Bob Quinn relents and let me go to AAA. He says, you got 6 weeks to prove you can be here. Well, that year I was 17-7 in 25 starts, had 14 complete games, and about a 2.50 ERA. Cleveland left me there to win 17 games. I guarantee if you stop and look in the minor league records, you'll find a handful of people that ever won 17 games in AAA. The last game I pitched was in Denver, and Red Davis, the manager, told me I was going to the bigs the day after I pitched. So we're in Denver, and I think I've got 201 strikeouts, and Harvey Haddock's all-time record for strikeouts was 218 for a season. And the most strikeouts in a game was 18. Well, at that point, I'm 16-7, and I'm real happy to be 16-8, but I want that strikeout record. So in Denver, my forte was fastball. I could throw in the upper 90s, occasionally touch 100 on the old guns. And in Denver, the air was light, and you could throw about 104. And so in Denver, I'm out there. All I care about is striking out people. Where in the 6th inning, I've got 18. Wow. I'm sorry, in the 7th inning, I've got 18. And so I have one away from the all-time record for American Association. I ended up striking out 19, and I struck out 220 for the season, which was an all-time record, and 19 in the game, which was an all-time record. And then the next day, I flew to Michigan and then met the club 2 days later in Cleveland. Well, when you walk into a major league clubhouse, it's kind of like, it's kind of like the first time you get traded and walk into the clubhouse of the adversaries, like, hey guys, I'm on your side now. But you're walking into the major league clubhouse. Here's Jim Perry, Gaylord Perry, Ray Fosse, Dave Duncan, Rico Cardi. I mean, some biggies. And so you walk in and, they kind of like, yeah, okay, you're here. Sit your ass down. You're going to the bullpen. You're going to live there forever. Well, Ken Aspermani was the manager, and so he asked me throw batting practice. And, I'm proud of my fastball. I won 17 games, struck out 220 that year. Rico Cardi gets up to bat. And Rico always stood about 3 feet in front of the plate toward the pitcher's mound. And what he worked on was just rolling his wrist, not hitting the ball hard, just rolling his wrist. And Rico was quick. And it kind of hurt my feelings. And I said, get back in the batter's box. You want some heat? I'll throw you some heat. He said, you just throw the ball, kid. You just throw the ball. Well, I throw the first one as hard as I can throw it. And he hits it right on the button, but about a week late. And it's going down over the first base dugout. And I figure I got this old man. He hit the next 4 in the left center field bleachers, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing here? That was my welcome to the big leagues.
But it's also crazy to think that you throw a bunch of pitches, the day before in Denver, then you come up and they're having you throw again. Nowadays, that would never happen. The general manager would die doing that. Why did they allow that to happen back in the day?
Well, that was about 2 days in between there, because I had gone to Michigan for a couple days as they were on the road on the West Coast or such, and then met them when they got to Detroit. Basically, our schedule as starters back then was you pitch hopefully 9 innings on a Monday night, rest Tuesday, throw batting practice on Wednesday, rest Thursday, and start again on Friday. I mean, that was a normal scenario. I think the problem with today is now in the late 60s and 70s, they started the idea of this 100-pitch rule, that the kids, you know, you can't hurt their arm. And part of that came from people like David Clyde, that was such an outstanding pitcher. His coach in high school had him throw like 3 consecutive days in the state games just to win, to hell with the kid's arm. And so they instituted this 100-pitch rule. Well, when we were growing up, we played baseball all day. We threw all day. Like Nolan Ryan threw 250 pitches one game and come back 4 days later and pitch a complete game. The kids today with this 100-pitch rule have never developed the arm strength to be able to pitch 9 innings. The other thing the 100-pitch rule does, in the 6th inning, you're looking to the bullpen. You're done. You're at or near 100 pitches. And I was so wild, an average game for me starting was 150 pitches, through 225 once. I can remember Harvey Haddix in spring training, maybe 1975 or 1976. And I was so wild, 6'5", 185, I didn't have the muscle mass to really control the ball and put it in the same slot every pitch. And I got credit for a no-hitter in the minor leagues when I didn't hit anybody, which was pretty much the scenario. I can remember Harvey Haddix in spring training in 75 or 76 telling me, Kearney, you're going to start the game today. You're going to pitch 3 innings or 100 pitches, whichever comes first.
Which was it?
Yeah.
I might have got through the 3 innings. 100 pitches.
But you know, another thing I noticed is innings pitched. They didn't say I had to do math here, but I did. In those 4 big years that you had, you averaged just over 112 innings. The best closer in baseball last year averaged 70 innings, or a little over that. How would that have made a difference in your career if you didn't have to throw so many innings?
I don't think it would have made a lot of difference. The whole scenario was different back then. You look at Goose Gossage. I know he's always talking about Mariano Rivera and how their roles were different. Mariano was a great pitcher, but so was Goose. The idea, though, Goose would come in the 6th inning and pitch till the end. Stop and look at how many times Mariano threw 2 innings or more. In 1979, opening day, Corrales brought me into the game with 2 outs in the 5th inning, and I finished the game. That year, I pitched 5 games where I pitched 4 innings or more. You know, that was an interesting year because they had traded for me in October, then they traded for Sparky Lyle in December. And we had a midwinter banquet in January. And after the banquet, Sparky, Corrales, and I are sitting at a table having 1 or 10 beers, you know, and bullshitting, getting to know each other. And Sparky goes to the bathroom, and Pat turns to me and says, Kearney, we got a problem. And I looked at him and says, no, we don't, Pat. When you traded for Sparky, I didn't expect to be the short man. I figured he was one of the 3 best short relievers in the game. I said, my strength at this ball club is I'm a converted starter. I can give you a lot of innings. My position here, best position I feel, is to be Sparky's setup man. I can hold him from the 5th to the 8th, and then if it need be, Sparky can finish the game. And, you know, he's all brightened up and such. And I told him I'd been in the Cleveland organization for 11 years, and I had played on 2 teams in 11 years that finished over 500. I said, I want to win. And that's the big thing. Anything I can do to help us win. But I also told him I wanted 3 things. 1, I wanted to grow my beard. After 6 years in the Marine Corps, I hated the shave. 2, I wanted to be able to run the way I wanted to run. I told them I'd run more than anybody else on the team, but I wanted to run distance. And what I did is laps around the entire field rather than 50-yard sprints. I didn't think sprints did me much good. And I said the third thing is in Cleveland for the last 3 years, Frank Robinson and Jeff Torborg would let me throw nothing but a fastball. And I made 2 all-star teams throwing nothing but a fastball. I said I want to be able to throw my breaking pitch and my changeup as well. And he kind of looked at me concerned, and I said, okay, I'll make you this deal. Let me throw what I want to throw in spring training. And if at the end of spring training you think my pitch selection and my off-speed pitches suck, we'll revisit this. And he agreed. Well, I pitched 24 innings that spring and gave up 1 run. Never was it revisited. And to me, that was a lot of that particular season's success, is everybody in the league had seen nothing but fastballs for 3 years when I came in. Now I'm throwing a big swerve, kind of a slider, curveball mix, and a palm ball for a changeup. And, I mean, people were just having serious problems adjusting to that. And needless to say, the big thing there was I pitched 143 innings. The ERA never got over 2 the entire season. But to me, the biggest thing is in 143 innings, I gave up 99 hits.
Wow.
That was it.
That's fantastic. So you came up as a starter, and then you get converted to the bullpen. But back then, like I remember the 70s, I can remember Mark Fidrich's rookie year throwing 11 innings in a game. I could remember Larry LeGros throwing 10, 11 innings in a game. So converting from a starter to a reliever, what maybe wasn't as difficult, is that true in the 70s? Because there's still this bulk amount of innings that are being pitched.
Yeah, I think the big thing about going from a starter to reliever is the mental aspect of the game. In a starter, you've got 4 days to prepare. You've got all day to eat right and get yourself together, get a good night's sleep, and 20 minutes to warm up, and everything is kind of scheduled for you. In the bullpen, you're a spectator. The phone rings. Suddenly, you got to get your mind right. You got to be aggressive. The other hard thing about the bullpen is you go out and get your ass kicked tonight. You got to come back tomorrow night like a Rottweiler, having last night affect you not at all, and just go balls to the wall and let's get this done. And so I think the mental part transition is harder than the physical part. And again, you've got to be a little bit crazy to be a good relief pitcher. You've got to be able to turn the switch on and off just that quick. And so being a little bit nuts helps.
Good.
Yeah,
Certainly helped you.
It did. And I'm
It
looking.
helped me a bunch. It helped me. The big thing about me is I knew I was a one-trick pony. As far as athleticism, I was probably in the bottom 10% of anybody that ever played the game. I was a one-trick pony. I could throw the ball and throw it as hard as anybody. And so I knew when I got to the major leagues after 7 years in the minors and a couple winters in Mexico that how do you stay here? Getting here is one thing, but staying here is something else. You got one pitch. And you're inherently wild. So the emu creature solved all that. I could be a wild and crazy guy, scream at myself on the mound, be a prankster, and everybody was a little tentative to get in the batter's box with this guy throwing 100, inherently wild, and gave you the impression he really didn't give a shit. And so I nurtured that, and it got me 10 years of pension time in the major leagues for a guy that never would. Well, for a guy that played junior varsity baseball in the 11th grade.
So you're with the Indians in 75. You start off as a starter, and then you convert to the bullpen. Didn't you have a teammate on that 75 team that did a similar thing but down the road? Dennis Eckersley. He was a starter on that 75 team before he became this Hall of Fame reliever. Could you, when you watched him pitch, could you say this guy's going to be a success no matter what role he has?
Eck, I think he was 20 years old in 75, had played 1 year in Double-A in San Antonio that I know of. And the thing about Eck was he was an arrogant ass on the mound. Nicest guy you'd ever want to meet off the field. But on the field, he was like a Marine. It was just, get your ass in there, let's get this over with. You know, and which made him a lot of money. Eck had a good fastball, probably 92, 93, a good slider, and superb control. The other thing about Eck is he had a funky motion. Threw with a stiff front leg, came out kind of a low sidearm, and the ball came out of his shoulder. The hitters had trouble picking up the ball. It was probably halfway to the plate before they picked it up well. And Eck, right from the get-go, was balls to the wall and successful. The thing you can see about Eck, even as a starter in 75, that he would have made a great short relief pitcher, even at that point, because he could throw the ball where he wanted to, when he wanted to, and once around the batting order, you had no chance. Eck, to me, one of the best pitchers I ever got the opportunity to play with. A man that could win 200 ball games, have a 20-win season, throw a no-hitter, have a 50 relief season with 300 saves. I mean, there's never been another one. There's nobody that can touch those stats. And like I said, Eck was the nicest guy you'd want to meet, funny as hell off the field. But as far as facing him, everybody hated Eck. They absolutely hated Eck because he seemed like an arrogant ass on the mound. But it played well.
Hey, 1975, your manager, Frank Robinson, in Cleveland becomes the first black manager in baseball history. What was that season like for you guys, and what was Robbie like to play for?
Robbie was a hard ass. I mean, and that's the type of manager I liked after being in the Marine Corps and dealing with gunnery sergeants. Robbie and Pat Corrales were probably the epitome of a gunnery sergeant on the field. Frank did not put up with anything less than 100% of effort, and Frank was a winner and expected you to be one. Frank was good. The thing about Frank is, I remember John Ellis going into him one time, who was a backup catcher, saying, "Frank, I need to play more. I need to play more." And Frank says, "Johnny, you can't hit, you can't run. Be happy in the bullpen and stay out of my office." I mean, Frank was that way. If you didn't want to know, don't ask.
I'm going to have to go left here on you, Jim. There was a guy you mentioned early in our talk about Fritz Peterson. You said you were friends with him. Did you ever talk about his situation he had with Mike Kekich and the wives and the kids and everything?
Well, it was kind of a running joke, and Fritz had a real good sense of humor. You know, it was interesting. Kekich eventually went to Mexico to become a doctor, came back, and Fritz, the way I hear it, ended up supporting both families. But that was just Fritz. Fritz was happy-go-lucky guy. You know, you look at some of his stats in the Yankees, he holds records, big-time records with even those people like Whitey Ford and other left-handers there. Fritz was interesting. Fritz was a little overweight and had a weight problem. I remember we went into Lindell's AAC one night, which was a bar across from Old Tiger Stadium. All the ball players went to. And Fritz ate a pizza, drank a pitcher of beer, went in the bathroom, stuck a finger down his throat, and coughed it all up. And he came back, and I said, "Fritz, what the hell was that all about?" Oh, he said, "Oh, I like to eat it, but I don't like to wear it."
Oh, my God.
I mean, that was Fritz to the epitome. I mean, a great guy and funny as hell. I remember one year he carried around a lock. He wanted to be a locksmith, so he was forever had locks he was picking. He was pick your doorknob. You'd lock it at night, and he'd pick it and open it. Gotcha! And close the door. And, I mean, that was just Fritz. Great guy.
We're talking about, for those who don't know, one of the strangest trades in baseball history, when Fritz Peterson and Mike Hekich basically traded families. They traded wives and kids and kind of dogs, the whole bit. It was an odd situation, but sounds like they played it about as well as they could have, Jim.
They did. I can remember watching Johnny Carson the night or two after that happened, and Johnny talked about it, and he said, yeah, they traded wives, kids, and a dog to be named later.
Now, you, of course, we mentioned, were traded from Cleveland to Texas. One of the benefits was that you had that great season and you were able to grow your facial hair again after being in Cleveland for so long. But that 79 season, other than a good season you had in Cincinnati in 82, really was the peak of your career, because after that, injuries really plagued you the last portion of your career. What was it like to pitch knowing you weren't physically the same pitcher that dominated, for a time in the 70s?
Well, it's kind of like, what we used to call a tricky left-hander, that sinker, slider, that kind of stuff. We used to call it getting you out with mirrors. Knowing that you couldn't throw the ball by people consistently, which was my forte, it was tough. The toughest part was going from being the muscle on the team to being the fat. That was the toughest part. It's hard. The problem was I hyperextended an elbow in spring training in 80 and tried to pitch with it. And by adjusting the arm motion, I managed to lock up two vertebrae in my lower neck. And then every time I threw, it felt like they were trying to tear the trap off my left shoulder. Oh. And so then I went on a disabled list, came back the next year, pitched fairly well in the strike-shortened 75 season. And then, 2001 season. And then 2000, that winter, Eddie Robinson gave me away to the New York Mets. And for a Doug Flynn, I believe, who didn't want to be in Texas. And then I got sent. I never even talked to the general manager of the Mets after they traded me in December. And then in January, I get traded to Cincinnati in the Foster deal and show up in Cincinnati. And 82 in Cincinnati was, I think, the worst season they ever had. And then from there, they had Tommy Hume, who was a good closer. And at that point, I asked to renegotiate my contract in July. And they told me, no way, we're going to get rid of you after the end of the year. And so I said, to hell with you, I'm done shaving. So after I quit shaving, 6 weeks later, I get traded to Chicago.
I don't want to bring up a bad memory, but was it true that your very last game you pitched in the big leagues, it was a poor performance and fans actually tried to throw a bottle at you?
No, they didn't try. They did.
A bottle of what? That's the key.
It was an empty beer bottle. At least they could have thrown a full one, I mean. But yeah, that was. I don't know if that was the last game I pitched in Cleveland. The thing is I dislocated an elbow. You can see the scar here, and tore the flexor tendons completely off the elbow in Cincinnati and Chicago in '83. Tore the medial collateral ligament in half, and then that was second game of the season, and the White Sox released me the week before spring training. In '83, I go to Philadelphia just for a workout and throw on the side, and Tug McGraw blew out his arm that night, and they signed me to a contract a year and a half, 14 months after destroying the elbow. I wasn't anywhere near ready to pitch. Okay, but at that point, you wave $100,000 in front of my face for a couple months. I'm easy. What can I say? And, my first appearance in Philadelphia, I pitched one inning and only gave up 7 runs.
Only. That's an ERA of 63.
I had a good moving fastball. It was moving to left field, to right field, center. Yeah, and then in Cleveland, the same scenario. I get released by Philadelphia, picked up by Milwaukee, sent to Double-A, brought up in September. The next spring, my idea at that point was when I got hurt, I had eight years and 157 days of major league time. You needed 10 years was maximum pension benefit, and you had to be on the roster 162 games a year to get a year worth. And so I needed a year and 22 days or something like that for 10 years. And so I kept getting released at the end of the season. I would pitch all winter, be as good as I was going to be in spring training when the kids hadn't hit all winter, and I looked really good in spring training. By June, they'd caught up to me, and I got my ass released again. And so basically it took me 4 years of modeling uniforms, but I retired with 10 years and 5 days of Major League service. So, yes, at that point, I knew I wasn't getting anybody out. It was just trying to be in the best shape you could at spring training, make a team, get some time, move on. Before I got hurt, my lifetime ERA, I believe, was 2.86. After my modeling uniform stint, it ended up 3.36. But yes, in Cleveland, I gave up 7 runs that night, and one of our drunk patrons fired a bottle at me. And I told the reporter after that, he says, "Were you worried about that?" I said, "Hell no. He was my fan. He couldn't hit me."
Jim, I want to touch on something you mentioned a little bit earlier about pranks. What was the best prank that either you did on someone or you saw done on another player?
Well, probably the best one. I mean, you did some in the minor leagues. You did some. You'd see somebody in the bar at night that was drunk, and you'd go out and put Vaseline all over their doorknob on their room, and then you'd usually catch them about an hour later, curled up, sleeping in front of the door so they couldn't get in. You know? I think the best one we ever did was the great fire extinguisher fight in I believe it was Minnesota. Short had a hotel there called the Leamington. Bob Short that owned the team before Brad, and we stayed there because it was Short's hotel, but it was really over the hill. And so one night after a game, we're having the next day off. We're flying to Seattle and play the following day, and we're sitting in the room playing cards. There was Sparky, myself, Dave Racich, and maybe Doc Medich. And, you know, we were 3 sheets to the wind, had a day off, so we weren't worried about it the next day. And Bob Shirley comes down. And Bob shows up. He's going to bring us his plate of fruit from the room. He shows up, and he's got shaving cream all over his head like a snow cone, and he was Mr. Lubner. And Bob comes in, and so as he comes in, Sparky goes outside and gets a fire extinguisher, one of these 5-gallon soda waters you turned upside down and sprayed with a little hose, you know, and they were big enough to put out a match maybe. And as Mr. Lubner turns around to Sparky, Sparky just hoses his ass down. I mean, just hoses him down. And we're all laughing like hell, think this is a good idea. And so Danny Darwin says, "Tell you what, I know Buddy's sleeping in the room. I can hear him snoring, Buddy Bell." He says, "I'll go down to the desk, play like I'm Buddy and lost my key. They'll give me a key, and we'll hose him down." And so he goes down. Sure enough, he comes back with Buddy's room key. Well, we get about 5 of these soda water fire extinguishers now, and we open the door. Buddy's sleeping naked on top of the bed. We ring the bed and just hose his ass down, dump the fire extinguishers to haul ass, you know. And we ended up emptying almost 3 floors of fire extinguishers.
Oh, my God.
And, you know, I remember Richie Zisk, we got him, and he came and joined us. He thought this was great. And so we're all there in our underwear, soaking wet, and this security cop comes up the elevator, 2 o'clock in the morning, and the epitome of Barney Fife, you know. And so we're all standing there soaking wet with these fire extinguishers. Says, "You guys got to go back to your room." And Zeus says, "You better get your ass back on that elevator, go downstairs, and not show up again. Little guy's eyes got big, got back in the elevator. He left. We never saw him again. So the next morning, we're all down. I think we got 6 or 7 guys with the fire extinguishers. So the next morning, we go down into the restaurant and having breakfast, and I went to put my shoes on, and I had a brand new pair of floor shines. And I thought we'd gotten away with dousing Buddy. He didn't recognize any of us. He recognized me because he had pissed in both of my shoes. So I am showing up down in the restaurant barefooted because I haven't got any other shoes. And everybody's saying, who doused us? Who's the ass here? Blah, blah, blah. Well, boy, look at me. I'm going, my shoes are gone. Can't blame me. So we go to Seattle, and we come back to Arlington, and Pat Corrales has a meeting first day we're back in town. He says, okay, boys, I want to congratulate you all. You got us kicked out of the Leamington. He says, but there's one problem. I've got a bill here for $700 for water dam. He said, that needs to be paid and paid now. And he left the room. So the 7 of us, we were called to 6-7 for the rest of the year by the teammates. We all had to go up and put a $100 bill on the table. So the gig was up. They knew everybody was there.
Oh, my God. So we do a segment here, a trivia segment called 50-50. I'm going to give you a 50% chance to get a trivia question right or wrong, true or false. And I'm going to go to one of the only movies I know made about the Cleveland Indians, which is Major League. Which is funny because they said that Charlie Sheen's character, Ricky Vaughn, was modeled after Al Rabowski, but I think he could have been modeled after you, too. There's some similarities there. But anyway.
Well, it is, and you look at the old pitcher was Gaylord Perry, the Juju Man.
Right.
Was Rico Carty. I mean, that thing rang all kinds of bells watching it.
So I asked this trivia question, I believe, of a short-time teammate of yours, Milt Wilcox. Was the movie, true or false, the movie Major League was not shot actually in Cleveland, but at Chicago's Comiskey Park? True or false?
Milwaukee.
Yep, you know.
Good.
Yeah, that is, so it's false, the answer. It is true. Milwaukee County Stadium.
Wonderful.
Did you ever play with Pete Vukovich, who played the slugger?
Oh, yeah. Vukie was great. Every time Vukie got a new pair of pants, baseball pants, he drew right below the belt 2 little boobs hanging down below the belt. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you ever get a chance to look at Vukie's uniform when he was pitching or such, I believe it was the right side just below the belt. There'll be 2 little boobs with a nipple on each one.
Oh my God!
Now that's trivia.
Yes, it is.
Oh God!
Hey Jim, we started with your nickname, the Amazing Emu, and we'll end it by you telling us what the Emu Outfitting Company is that you started as soon as your playing days ended in 1987, and where that has taken you.
I started it in Texas. There's 98% private land as it came into our nation as a state. And so if you want to hunt here in Texas, you have to lease private land from a ranch. And so what they do is they have different pastures in the ranch, and you lease a pasture. So I would go lease a 20,000-acre ranch, split it up into half dozen pastures, and I would pay like $3 an acre for the hunting rights. Then I'd lease it to groups for $5 an acre hunting rights. And that's the way it started. But then after about 5 or 6 years, you learned that the money wasn't in actually running the trips. The money was in booking the trip. So it morphed into a booking company. We booked hunting and fishing trips in Alaska, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, mountain states of Idaho, Montana, Colorado. And the thing was, is we would get a hunter, say, take, for example, Alaska, $8,000 for a week in Alaska. The booking agent would get 20% of that just putting ends together. So I would make $1,600 just booking clients for them. So you would do shows and advertising, the website, and what you're doing is just collecting clients for them. And there was no overhead at that point other than a computer and a printer and telephone. And so it morphed into that. And then I had been booking for this guy in Alaska, and he hired me to be the general manager. And we'd go up in April and come back middle of October. We would fish from the middle of June to the middle of September, and then hunt brown bear from the middle of September to the middle of October. And then I got hired by a company in Brazil, Amazon Tours, to run their American office. So I do all the booking and send the people down to them. And then I did that for 5 years, went back to Alaska, booking for them. Another guy hired me in Brazil for another operation to start an American office for them. And so it's morphed back and forth, but basically the money in the game is booking for, not the running of. And it allowed me a lot more time home. And also there was no overhead. You hadn't stuck your neck out basically an inch to do all this. And so this is what I've done. I've always loved, like I said, places where no man's ever been before. Middle of the Bitterroot Mountains in Idaho, the outback of Alaska. In Brazil, we ran peacock bass fishing trips, 1,100 miles up into the Amazon from the ocean. No roads, never had been timbered. Unreal. I mean, you'd fly in by float plane to these remote rivers. You'd have floating camps or a big riverboat you'd stay on, native guides. The only English that they knew was, "You missed big fish," you know, and it was just awesome. But I mean, to fly into these areas, it looked like when the Portuguese first saw it in the 1500s. Just totally unreal. The pink dolphins, more macaws and toucans you ever thought existed, three-toed sloths, jaguars, unreal.
I think that reminds me of Anaconda a little bit.
Yeah, right. Sounds unbelievable.
Yeah.
When Bill first suggested, why don't we try and get Jim Kern, I thought, man, wow, my favorite combination, a great pitcher and a great personality, and you did not disappoint. So thank you for spending your afternoon, as it is in Texas, with us, and continued success with you and the Amazing Emu great outfitting company.
Well, you know, like my father once told me, be who you are. He says you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Be who you are. Words of wisdom.
You're even better than what I remember from the magazine with the great hair and the beard. I love that stuff. You're awesome.
Oh, I loved your Topps baseball cards, and I remember like in 79 or 80 going, what happened to this guy?
Exactly.
He changed. Three-time All-Star, everybody. Jim Kern, one of the greatest pitchers of the 70s. And thank you for taking some time and spending it with us today, Jim.
I enjoyed it. It's good you got a sense of humor.
Thank you.
Yes. It was Mark who threw the bottle at you, by the way.
It was. He was there.
No, if I threw the bottle, I had better aim.
No, wait a minute. You said you were my fan from way back.
Yeah, I was. That's right.
That's right. Must have been you because you couldn't hit me.
I had bad eyes, so if I threw it, it's not going anywhere near you.
Be good, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a good one.
He's one of those guys that, like we've noticed with some of them, all you do is say one little question, and he goes on for 10 minutes. And, and then it's like you can see his mind working. And then I pitched there, let me tell you a story about that guy.
No, you know, it reminds me of the Rick Barry interview where 5 minutes into the interview he says, you guys obviously don't have to ask me a lot of questions.
Right, yeah,
But what a fantastic
Yes.
interview.
Yep.
What great stories.
But I liked the fact, that he spoke freely.
Yes.
Oh, no
He
question.
did not,
Really.
No holds barred.
And I loved his take on Eckersley because we all were waiting for that.
Yeah.
No, he definitely has opinions, and he's not afraid to share them, but all in jest. You know?
Yes.
No.
Just has a great sense of humor. Obviously, doesn't take himself too seriously, and living the dream.
I wish I could have partied with those guys. You know?
Yes. He's amazing. His stories are kick-ass.
Gypcho Wasako, Bill, track in on television. And there's one of the guys that we all knew who this guy was, shot putter Brian Oldfield, but he's not happy.
No, he's not happy with anything. Be honest with you, they said he was pissed. He was pissed because he said television was made him finish not as well as he could have because there was too many delays in setting up the cameras and it bollocks his performance. He said TV is, you guys can fill in the blanks. So that they delayed us a half an hour and I just couldn't kick the attitude. He says the delays, I'll be damned if I know why they happened. He said that TV, he'd rather not have TV if they're going to mess up an event. Doesn't like that. But Brian Oldfield, yes, he went on to have a big career because he also, in Sports Illustrated article about him a few months later, said, when God created man, he wanted him to look like me. And he also, for you guys to know, was also in Playgirl.
Yeah, Mark's got that signed.
I know he does. The man Mark's nuts.
Now let me ask you this: he's a UCLA guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he passed away just a few years ago.
By the way, I had a roommate that appeared in Playgirl. That's all I'll say on that.
Yes, I know. You told us this very disturbing news before.
I have girls that go in Playboy. You have guys in Playgirl. What is going on?
Yeah, I've got neither.
You'll get there.
Skating from under a shadow. Billy, the Rangers own New York when it comes to hockey, but there's another team, the Islanders, making some progress in just their third season in the NHL.
That's a good way you say it, Scott. Owned them, because when the Islanders first came in, the Rangers charged the Islanders an indemnity of almost $8 million, including interest for invasion of their territory. But yes, the Islanders were getting better because of guys like the newly drafted Dennis Potvin, who a lot of people compared to Bobby Orr, which is absolutely unfair to any hockey player that comes up. Just I'll give you a quick one. Bobby Orr played 657 games, had 270 goals. Potvin played 1,060 games, had 310 goals. If you just go by scoring, if you add that up, Dennis, Bobby Orr would have been a lot greater than Potvin, who arguably was one of the top 5 defensemen ever in the history of the NHL. But yes, I did love the Islanders, and I'll just relay one story. I was going up to the King's Forum Club when I was early 20s, and we used to find our way into the Forum Club, which I don't know how, I might have been drinking. But this girl comes up to me in the Forum Club and says, "Oh, who are you?" I told her I was Mike Bossy of the Islanders. She goes, You play for the Islanders? I said, I sure do. I scored 50 goals in 50 games. I had all the stats. And she goes, but why did you come out to the Forum Club in LA when you played in New York? I said, because I always have to scout our future opponents. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And she bought it.
So for 2 hours she hung out with me and I just kept giving her stats about how great I was.
Yeah. She went home and was like, that guy's the most conceited son of a bitch I've ever been around.
Yep. But as usual, I did go home alone, so I was really good at doing that. There was no closing the deal with me. Good night. Aren't you Mike Bossy? Yes, but I better go home now. 99.
I gotta take the red eye.
That's right. That's right. I don't care how beautiful you might be. I've got to go.
Room at the top. Why do coaches get hired and fired and hired and fired? It's happened since the beginning of sports. Jerry Colangelo, the GM of the Phoenix Suns in 1975, says when it comes to the X's and O's of stuff, one coach in this league knows just about as much or as little as every other one. But one guy will do a hell of a job with one club, move over to another, and flop. He is trying just as hard, knows just as much, but it's just not a fit. So, that's one of the things with managers and coaches is you're trying to find that one guy that can connect with this group of men or women in this case. And sometimes it works, and you find like a Steve Kerr is just perfect for what the Warriors have done these last 10 years, and it doesn't hurt that he has all-time great players because if he were to go next to another team, he's probably not going to have the same success. So it's been happening for forever, right? Right, Mark?
It has. Well, I equate this to comfort food. You're hungry. You need someone to run your menu or team or whatever, and you go back to someone that you have a previous connection to. A lot of people move around and, make contacts with people in different organizations. And so it's like the old boys network or whatever. So it's easier to hire the person you have a comfort with, that you've worked with in the past, than someone that you have no idea if they're going to be good or bad. They're new at this job. They could be brilliant or they could be a flaming disaster.
Well,
Really?
all I know is Kevin Lawry got hired by every team in the NBA in the 70s, and I was tired of it.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes Cotton Fitzsimmons got the job.
Yeah, or Kobe Brown.
Bob Scheffling managed the Cubs and the Tigers, and he said, I am not sure that a manager has ever actually won a game. On the other hand, a dumb one can lose you 5 or 6 games a year that a smart one won't. So in that regard, he's basically saying a smart one maybe doesn't win games, but they don't lose games. And I think that was
True.
one of Bill Belichick's, and Popovich is this way. They keep their team in the game and they wait for the other team to lose the game. And that was never more evident in that Patriots Falcons Super Bowl. Yep. And then again in the Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl. I mean, there's no reason the Patriots should have won either of those games. The other teams just did enough things to allow them to win. It was pretty miraculous, both of those. Now Randy is a dandy. The NBA has 2 rounds of their draft these days, but in 1971 they used to have 7 rounds. Eddie Donovan was the Buffalo Braves GM and picked Randy Smith, and he has become one of the best players in the league, especially on the defensive side of things. But this guy can do it all, can he, Billy?
Yeah, my gosh, he never took a day off. He did play at one time for an NBA record 906 games. There was actually nothing on the court that he couldn't do, or off the court. He played soccer. He did the high jump. But when he was playing in college and with the Buffalo Braves, he was absolutely fantastic. He was too fast for practice, so they had to actually put a weighted belt on him so his teammates could catch up. He was an incredible player, but he also had a little bit of a Forrest Gump in him. When he was with the Braves, his coach Jack Ramsey said, I wanted a timeout. So there's Randy bringing the ball up, and I yell, Randy, timeout, timeout. What did Randy do? He just left the ball in the middle of the dribble and came over. He forgot to call the timeout.
Yeah, that's called a turnover.
Yes. But they said he was just an amazing person, an amazing athlete. And here was a guy that, at least when he went to the NBA, started as a 12th man, as a forward. By the end of the year, he was the starting guard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was.
And the Braves had a lot of good players. Bob McAdoo.
Yeah, that was his best friend.
Gregorio. They had.
We have Gar Hurd coming on as a guest this coming month, and he was a big factor on those teams. So Smith says, I've always been the best in everything. Small high school, small college, no publicity. Then nobody thought I could make pro ball. People have always come to me and said, Randy, I don't think you could do it. And I always said, well, I thought I could.
Yeah, and he could.
And he did. For Sam, the price is always right. Sam Snead, 62 years old at the time of this article. In other words, past our prime. But he was still enjoying life. And even now, 50 years later, he is tied for the most PGA Tour wins of all time with a guy by the name of Tiger Woods, each having won 82 times. This guy was one of the best golfers ever. But Bill, more than that, he was a character, wasn't he?
He was. He would just take bets from anybody and play. And they said he was that sort of down home guy. So he was funny. He was nice. He would go out with his pals and just play and bet them. He once took part in he said he never got to play for the U.S. Amateur Championship, so he went out and he did that. He won by 10 strokes, but when they were giving out the trophy, he goes, this trophy isn't for me. I was just having fun. So he gave it to the second place guy. Yeah. And I also believe Sam Snead is the only male player to have won an LPGA Tour. He did that in 1962 in a battle of the sexes. So,
well, I think his wins cover 6 decades. I think
you're right.
He won his first Grand Slam event was in 1949, the Masters.
Well, golf needs guys like him now. He would be amazing on the tour now.
But in 1965, he won the Greensboro Open when he was 52. In 1973, he made the cut for the U.S. Open at 61. In 1974, he shot a 66 at the L.A. Open. And in 1997, at the age of 78, he shot a round of 85.
Wow. Wow.
Just
Yeah, he's widely considered to have one of the greatest and most pure swings in golf history, despite never taking a lesson in his life. And he said, getting back to your point, Billy, never gamble with a stranger. And if you do, and he stops arguing the handicap too soon, you know you got a hawk in the chicken yard. When I was at Boca, there were 3 guys I didn't know who asked me to play one day. I said, well, you know, my fee for a playing lesson is $100. That didn't seem to shake them. I said, we'll play a $10 Nassau. What's your handicap? It's a mistake not to know these things. They said 5, and I said, fine, I'll give you 6. So we kind of played along without making a dent, and on the 4th or 5th hole, I said, listen, I'll dispense with the fee and play your best ball and cut you for $1,000. And they all said, okay. And we wound up playing 4 courses over the next 5 days. I won $10,000.
That's awesome. Wouldn't that mean he was like a hustler before the hustler?
Yeah. Yep. All right, let's get going. For the record, Mark.
I've got Eddie Donovan, who resigned as general manager of those Buffalo Braves. He agreed to become general manager of the New York Knicks. He had formerly been a coach and general manager of the Knicks. And he stayed as the GM of the Knicks from 1975 to 1982. And then he became like president and director of player personnel the next 4 seasons or whatever. So he's always been a Knick at heart.
Well, he went back to the NBA too. Probably a long-term smart move for Mr. Donovan. Bill?
I was going to say Virginia Wade. She beat Martina Navratilova and earned $15,000. Virginia Wade was one of those ladies that when I read this, I remember as a kid, and I don't think she was the one on Virginia Slims, the cigarette, but I just remember that name, Virginia Wade. I never thought she was real. So when I read these articles on tennis, I'm thinking, oh my God, yeah, she is real. So that was the only reason I said that. I just thought, oh, Virginia Wade is a person. I was like, I used to watch I Love Lucy, and they would do the credits at the end, and it said makeup, Max Factor. I didn't know Max Factor was a person. I thought it was just a
company.
name.
Yeah,
I thought it was company. That's what I thought about Virginia Wade.
I'll do Joe Ducky Medwick, 63, died of a heart attack in St. Petersburg, Florida, a Hall of Famer. He played 17 seasons with 4 teams, the Cardinals, Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants, and Boston Braves, compiling a lifetime batting average of .324, and he is the answer to a trivia question. Do you guys know what it is?
I do the Angels, so no.
He is the last National Leaguer to win batting's Triple Crown in 1937.
Oh.
So it's been 88 years since a National Leaguer won the Triple Crown.
Mark, who was the last American leaguer?
Oh, God. You'll have to help me on that. I can't think of
Miguel
that.
Cabrera.
All right. He was on your favorite team.
Yes.
The Tigers?
Yes.
Yep.
Triple Crown winner.
2012.
Lou Whitaker.
2012. Oh, God. I feel so stupid now. Miguel Cabrera.
Yeah.
Holy golly. Okay. The show's over.
Yes. It's
Right?
out of sight, out of mind.
My God.
I literally, when I was asking that, Bill, thought he was going to interrupt me before I finished the question.
It was too obvious of an answer, man.
Mark knows who hit a ground ball to second base in a June 7th game from 1971.
We're doing a show about stuff that happened 50 years ago, so you can't expect me to remember stuff that happened 10 years ago. My brain can't store all that information.
Faces in the crowd. Bill.
I was going to say Ginny Acabane. She was an accomplished squash player who was an early convert to softball. She was also one of the first to play on Team USA squad, and they won a championship in 1979.
There you go. Mark, can you top that?
Yes, I can. Dan Dolman, a 6'7" senior forward at Roger Bacon High School. By the way, who's Roger Bacon? He scored 47 points in the final regular season game. He had the city scoring title of averaging 26.7 a game, and the career record So Dan actually then ended up going to North Kentucky, and so he's playing high school ball in Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's just right across the river from Kentucky, so it makes sense. He went to North Kentucky. He averaged 18.6 points a game there. He's third on the all-time scoring list there, and he's in the school's Hall of Fame. His son, Justin Dolman, played at Xavier from 2003 to 2007. So there's a basketball genes there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, another Cincinnati school, Xavier.
Yep. Hey, last but not least, Billy, the 19th hole. You got a really pissed off Pat O'Malley coming at us.
I do. Man, two readers love that Frisbee was getting its due. Not Pat O'Malley, though, like you said, Scott. I'm going to pull a Nick Saban and hit the table. Sir, I have never in my life been so insulted by one article. The word sport has been abused. I play football, baseball, and basketball in high school. My buddies and I work hard from August till June playing real sports. We thought we were accomplishing something, but when we're put in the same category as Frisbee players, I get nauseated. People who can't succeed in real sports have to resort to the easiest, least physically draining sport they can find and try to pass it off as a sport. If Frisbee throwing is going to be considered a sport, then why not include skimming stones across a lake? Or hey, make banana peeling a sport. Thank you for insulting my intelligence. Sincerely, Pat O'Malley. Angry.
No, you should have signed it with love. Pat
Yeah,
O'Malley.
that's right.
I got one. Mo Rivers' comment about how fired up other teams have been against the Wolfpack this year and the fact that NC State did not make the tournament point out one thing. UCLA's accomplishment of the last decade is one of those rare sporting feats that's becoming more incredible with the passage of time, says Leif Johnson of Garden Grove. 50 years later, that letter still holds up, the last true great dynasty in American sports. We will talk about that last UCLA victory and championship for John Wooden's boys next week. Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys and gals.
For Mark, for Bill, I'm Scott, and we are past our prime.